Let's start streaming this bad boy. Huh? All right, good. Good. No, I'm joking. Last week we spent all of our time focusing a lot on the masking and rotoscoping tools inside of After Effects. And I think it was I don't remember who brought it up, but someone asked about creating and importing 3D objects. I think the whole idea was that you guys were wanting to make or wanting to include a true three-dimensional object of our little spaceship inside of our alien invasion project. Well, today we're going to talk about 3D in After Effects. Now, in the past, 3D in After Effects has really been extraordinarily basic. The 3D layers that we've explored before really kind of encapsulated the entirety of the 3D conversation inside of this application. Well, that's changed now in a big way. After Effects is finally embracing the rest of the world and is incorporating 3D imagery and objects into its native application in Adobe CC. So we're going to be looking at 3D text and 3D objects inside of After Effects today, and how we can also integrate other applications, specifically Cinema 4D, into our pipeline. Before we get started, can you guys do me a tremendous favor? Well, actually, I guess I can do it real fast. It was unknown to me at the beginning if we have C4D on these machines. We do. Okay, great. Cool. So we might mess around with Cinema 4D. However, I may bring that into next week's conversation about all this. Okay. Great. Just want to make sure it was installed. Let's jump over to renderography.com real fast and kind of explore what we're going to be building for this week's homework and our lab assignment. Okay. Today we're going to be creating what you see at the top there. It comes directly out of your book. This is the Chapter 11 assignment. However, the Chapter 11 instructions are really going to encourage you to jump over into Cinema 4D. And I say that we're not quite ready to incorporate a new application into our production pipeline. So I'm going to append the instructions in Chapter 11 ever so slightly and encourage you to only use the native built-in tools that we find in After Effects to create the imagery that you see in front of you. Everything that you see in both the sample video and in the book can be used and created using the built-in default extrusion tools in After Effects. If you look carefully in the book, the stuff that I'm going to be talking about today is in the extra credit part of Chapter 11. So it's still there, it's just not in the primary instructions of our assignment this week. From the completed example below, this is the lab, excuse me, let's go into homework. In the completed example below, this is what we're making. Once it loads, come on, computer. Pretty cool. Very simple graphic opening for the lunar landing media, okay? But what's most important in this is that all the text are true three-dimensional objects in After Effects, which is rock and roll. Okay, so that's what our mission is this week. Our lab this week is going to encourage you to continue thinking about 3D by creating a fun little animation that looks something similar to what you see here. This is what we're making. We're going to be making a 3D room. This is going to allow us to continue to flex our muscles on how to position things in 3D and create objects in 3D with assets that we've already created. Now, I don't care what artwork you put on the walls. It doesn't really make a difference to me. So we'll go through the... They don't even have to be videos. I would encourage you to use the projects that you've already created for this class. You have those assets here. You don't need to go out and find stuff. It would be better if they were videos, absolutely, because you already have a small library of videos that you've created, so that will work for this assignment. More on this a little bit later. So today is going to be another 3D day where we really jump into a lot of the extra 3D features and jump in. Okay? Sound good? Everyone excited? This is actually a really neat conversation to have. Adobe CC is up the game in 3D in a number of big ways. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about the current state of 3D in After Effects. A couple weeks ago, we talked about 3D layers, and I want to revisit that conversation just as serve as a small refresher on the current state of very basic 3D tools in After Effects. And let's just do this. I want to import in some assets that you can actually find for this week's homework assignment. Let's just use this space landscape jobber guy, because it's kind of fun. All right. There we go. Actually, you know what? I just made a mistake. Let me hit undo here real quick. I want to make a composition that's just 1280 by 720. Wrong one. There we go. That's the wrong one. I hate these presets. I hate them with a passion. Here, I'm just going to make a custom one. So I can do it faster with custom numbers than I can with the preset ones. Come on in, Cyrus. Just getting started. Okay, that's more like it. Okay, so let's just take a look at what we have. So right now I have a basic composition. Inside that composition, its settings are its frame settings are 1280 by 720, and I've imported in this space landscape JPEG that comes with the assets for this week's assignment. Okay, so this is something that you have on the website, and if you have all the files downloaded from your book locally, you have this to play around with as well. Right now, this is a two-dimensional object. It's much larger in size when compared to the frame size of our composition, which is good because now we can play around with it just ever so slightly, and we continue to manipulate this object within inside of our three-dimensional space. Let's do this. Let's add in another layer to the mix, and let's add in some text in here. Space. That's a very boring font. Let's see, I think I have a cool font. I want a cool font. I don't know why I'm so like I need to have a cool font. There we go. There we go. I like that. Fun. Here, let's make it really retro. I have an idea. I just remembered the name of the font that I was originally looking for. But is it available to us? Yes, here we go. Ta-da! Now we're 50s retro sci-fi. I love it. Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of Starship After Effects. Okay, so pop quiz. We have two layers sitting here in After Effects. I want to make these 3D layers in After Effects. How do I do it? How do I transform a 2D layer into a 3D layer?
Push the cube.
The box, the cube, okay, absolutely. So we're in our toggle switches and modes column, and right there, that little box is going to transform each one of these two-dimensional layers into a three-dimensional layer. Let's just do both of them. There we go. And now, what does this gain us? Another dimension, right? So now we can create the illusion of things that are far off in the distance. And this is really kind of neat because maybe I want to create the illusion that my little lunar landscape is way far off in the distance, right? So it's an environmental piece opposed to something that's in the foreground. Let's just do that. I'm going to grab my space landscape guy, and if I open up its disclosure arrow under the position channel, I can just move this element off into the background, maybe something like that. In addition, if I started to maybe infuse another camera in here, so layer new camera, let's do this. There we go. I could use my unified camera tool. Do you guys remember that? Now we're creating the smallest illusion of parallax in that our object off in the distance is moving and rotating at a different rate than the object in the foreground. Let's just scale up our background a little bit. Let's put it at 100%. And then let's move it further off in the distance. Yes, yes, yes. There we go. Now we'll get that illusion of parallax. It's awesome. By moving the background, which is logarithmically larger than the text layer, further away from the camera, we're creating an illusion that the background is way off in the distance and our text is right next to the focal plane of our camera. These small little subtle things that give us a tremendous amount of options when designing our animations. For example, we can even take this concept a little bit further, and let's see. What if I just to change the position of my camera? See how everything moves, which is very cool. I could maybe pan up and pan down. I love it. A lot of fun. Gives us a lot of creative options on designing this this effect. Very cool. However, the one thing that we're always going to be faced with here is this, right? Where our text layer is always, and I mean always, 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 going to be two-dimensional. It's going to be flat. It's going to be a postcard. This, no likey at all, right? we always want to try to create the illusion of 3D. What does 3D give us? Depth. And I think that's the one-word answer that we're after. It gives us depth. The more that we can recreate reality in our animations, the more believable our animations are going to be. By simply enabling 3D layers and positioning these assets within inside of that Z space, we're one step closer. But still, it's all just an illusion, and that illusion breaks down pretty quickly when we start heading over to the that glancing angle, or excuse me, that incident angle, if you will, of our text layers or any of our three-dimensional layers. We don't get that illusion of depth. Well, ultimately, what I would like to do is to extrude this and make it, have some dimension on that back. Before Adobe CC, this was our option here, and it's absolutely crazy. And I'm not joking. I am not joking. A lot of folks, I know a tremendous amount of people. People that did this. Oops, too far. I'm not going to do it any more than this, because this is, as you can see, oops, I clicked off of it, I apologize. Yeah. Yep, because it works from this direction, and then you kind of get that illusion of extruded depth when you go over to the incident angle. It's better, but it's not great, right? Basically, you're putting each one of those layers 1 pixels apart from each other and are physically recreating dimension with stacked layers. It's mind-boggling that people used to do this in After Effects, but for a while, it used to be the only option, okay? Well, those days have come to pass. We no longer have to do this to get true extruded 3D text in After Effects. The guys down at Adobe have finally listened to the pleas of its users and have included a first-party offering for this extruded text in After Effects. And it's a good first stab at it, okay? It's not a great option, but it's a good option, okay? I think we're going to be getting to great in the next period of time. And I'll show you some great options towards the end of classes if this is something that you need right now for personal projects or for clients out there in the real world. Okay. Let me get rid of all these crazy duplicates and get back to my original text layer. All right. Okay. Yep. Things are looking good. All right. Oops, excuse me. So to work with extruded text in After Effects, we have to get all of our text elements into a path. If you remember from last week's conversation, paths and masks are all vector-based, meaning they're resolution independent, right? They're all mathematically created. This we like, right? We love this. Well, we need to transform all of these text layers, whom are also vector, okay, into a path before we can do anything we want with it, all right? So that's the first part of this. We take our two-dimensional text layer, and we need to convert it. And it's really easy to convert. You just select it, go to the top of the screen where it says Layer, and it says Make Shapes from Text. Make Shapes from Text. Rock and roll. This is fantastic. So let's just do it real fast, because we need to get a shape layer. And there it is. So a couple things that have happened here. Let's look at our timeline and explore precisely what the computer has done. So here's the original text layer down over here. You can see that the computer has automatically deactivated the visibility icon for that text layer. And now the space outlines shape layer above is doing, all the heavy lifting. If we were to explore space outlines, check it out. Here's all the contents. It basically has created a whole series of individual paths for each character in my text. Awesome. I love this. This is absolutely fantastic. Because now, now I can work with these on a number of different levels. We explored this a little bit last week. One of the best hidden features in After Effects is the fact that we can transform any text layer into a shape layer and utilize the awesomeness of shape layers going forward. To get into 3D, we have to have it be a shape layer, because the shape or the extrusion engine in After Effects only, and I mean only, this is a hard and fast rule, it only understands and will work with paths, okay? So we've got to have everything that we want to work with as a path, okay? All right. So let's expand the disclosure arrow for our space outlines. And if we go down over here to material options, let's just see. Yep, okay, that's all what I thought it was. We need to begin to transform this. Now, this is already a three-dimensional layer, so you can see that we have, that third dimension on each one of these channels, but neither in the material options nor in the transform options do you have any sort of parameter that allows us to extrude it out into that third dimension and create true 3D text. So step one is to convert it into a path, right? Get it into a shape layer. Step two is to change the rendering engine, okay? Now this is the new bit. In the upper right-hand corner of our composition viewer, up here, over here, renderer. See how that button says Classic 3D? This is where we need to go. After Effects is a new rendering engine. It's a ray-traced engine. That means it will basically allow us to accurately recreate reflections and some really cool materials like glossy things and like glass. But we need to switch it from Classic 3D, and you'll get this little popover, Classic 3D to ray-traced 3D. Okay, check it out. It's going to give you this, this very large warning, okay? It's basically saying, are you sure you want to do this? And for our situation, yes, we want to do this. If you look at what's enabled to us, it allows us to extrude and bevel text. Awesome. We can also generate reflections, refraction, which is how light goes through like glass surfaces and how it bends. We can also create this new thing called environmental layers, more on that later. And then, of course, we can actually curve our footage now. This is something that we in the After Effects community have been looking for a long, long time. Because flat things are incredibly boring, right? Everything that we work with inside of After Effects has always been flat. Now we can start to bend and deform them into cylinders. Okay, however, check it out. There's some things that are turned off. Blending modes, goodbye, okay? Track mats, goodbye. Layer styles, goodbye, okay? So a lot of the hardcore rendering features that we've been taking advantage of up until now are, poof, no longer available to us when we use this new rendering engine, okay? This is Adobe's first stab at a true 3D rendering engine in After Effects. And unfortunately, in its current form, it doesn't take advantage of a lot of the 2D rendering features that we've been using so far. And some other mask stuff as well. But for today, let's just hit OK. It's going to think about it. There's my little beach ball of doom. It's thinking about it, it's thinking about it, it's thinking about it. Now, I'm live streaming and trying to do ray trace 3D rendering in After Effects. Let's see how this goes. Not confident that it will go well. Hit OK. Just want to double check my live stream here. Yep, good. Still going good. All right. Now, notice that I have my little yellow progress bar going down over here. The moment you flip it into that Ray Trace 3D rendering engine, it's going to take significantly longer to render all of these frames. Okay? Significantly longer. But the results are definitely worth it. Okay, there we go. Now it's rendered a frame. Now don't worry, it's not always going to take that long, but we're playing in a much larger, in a much more complex series of rules. Let's take a look at it. And it's taking its merry old time here. While it continues to compute and think about what we got going on, check it out. Down over here, inside of our layer, our timeline, we have a new series of channels that are available to us now that we switched our rendering engine. So it's under just the just the layer. It's already there. Pops in the moment that you change it to Ray Trace 3D geometry options. Yeah, you got it. You got it. So check it out: bevel depth, hole depth, and extrusion depth. The first two, we'll come back to. I want to focus your attention on this last one, extrusion depth, because this is the channel that we need to kind of start to enable and mess around with to get the depth of our text layer. Now, right now, at an extrusion depth of 0, this is what we get. But let's increase this to, oh, I don't know, something, boom, like that. Now it's going to take a little bit of time to render. Now, mine, I'm not getting a really good, accurate response on the actual render times. As I mentioned, I'm streaming this at the moment, and that's sucking up a significant portion of my bandwidth, so that's a reason why it's taking so long. But check it out. I mean, now we're getting true, this is true 3D in After Effects. One that I can zip around and look at from a number of different angles. It's very, very cool. So true three-dimensional text in After Effects. Now, if you really take a critical look, an examination as to what we are building here, there are some problems with the visuals that we've created. Now that we're working in a true three-dimensional world, we have to be very aware of how light interacts with all of these elements. If you look carefully, and here's a great, I'm glad it updated just now. Here's a great example of how quickly we can get in trouble. With that extruded depth, the back of our object is now kind of, messing up the visual clarity of the front of our object. It's very difficult to read the word space. The opening in the P and the A are kind of lost as that extruded depth is muddying up everything. So how in the world are we going to focus our audience on the foreground of our text? Well, that is where the bevel depth and whole bevel depth really come into play. Okay? We want to change the shape of our text ever so slightly so that we create a much more apparent specular highlight across the surface of our geometry. So let's do this. Bevel style, let's change it to angular. Let's see what we get. It's going to render. And I want to increase my bevel depth to something quite large. Let's see what we get here. That was a habit. Sorry. Let's see. Let's see what we can see. Bum, 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 bum. So let's thinking about it. The moment you increase that bevel depth, yeah, it's still really difficult to see in its current form because I got a white bevel next to white letters. So let's change how the computer is handling all the materials that are associated with this three-dimensional text. Inside of our layers palette downstairs, this material options has some things in here that we want to look at. And oh, excuse me, I gotta apologize. This is not necessarily. Well, actually, let's turn on cast shadows. Let's turn that on. Now we should get some shadows on the inside of our letters. We also don't have a light source in this scene. That's going to be important to be able to generate all the correct shadows. It's taking over to a certain degree my machine. I'm also going to change under the content section here. I'm going to go into the fill parameters on each one of these and change the fill to something other than white. That may help. No, hold on a second. I want to change my resolution to quarter so it doesn't spend as much time rendering this quarter right there. It was at full, or is that auto a moment ago, and it's just trying to draw all this at full quality. Let's go back into my stroke options here. Yeah, it's, like I said, this is going to be a little bit of a process as we go through this section. All right, let's look at our materials. Let's add a light into the scene. That way, at the very least, we can start getting some shadows. And let's just use a spotlight. There we go. Here it is. That's more like it. Now we can see what in the world's going on. And on that light, I'm also going to increase the intensity quite a bit to make it a little bit brighter. A little bright, perhaps. And from the top view, I'm just going to move that light away from our object so it casts a much larger perspective. That'll work. Back to active camera. Yeah, cool. And there it is. You can see that we're now generating true three-dimensional text from a text layer inside of After Effects, and it's very, very neat. Now, I got to warn you guys, and you already get a sense of this from what we've explored so far. This takes forever to render. It really does. It's not something that is quick and fast, especially on these machines. So this is going to take a little bit of time to render, but it's, these are really good results for what we're working with so far. Oh my gosh. There it is. That's not bad. That's not bad at all, actually. Yeah, I'm liking that. Yeah, it's very crisp, very clean. I encourage you to continue to explore all the geometry options for your paths. Especially the bevel styles. There's angular, concave, and convex are basically going to change the profile of your bevel. It'll kind of get rid of that very sharp, chiseled edge, and they'll start to round it out, which is kind of lovely. Takes forever to render, though. All right, let's see if we can break this a little bit. Because one of the great things about working inside of After Effects and with this ray traced engine is the ability to very quickly go in and adjust a number of the material attributes associated with this three-dimensional object to create the illusion of a different type of material. Believe it or not, what generates the illusion of metal or glass or concrete isn't so much the actual shape itself, but how light interacts with that three-dimensional shape. These material attributes define the characteristics of that object. Okay, and specifically, let's zoom in and take a look at what we have so far. I think this is probably most easily seen by analyzing the S. There we go. Hey, that's a cool kind of bevel. Awesome. It's a very cool bevel. All right. However, I'm going to change it back to. Well, no, I'm not going to change it back to angular because you can kind of see it here. It's not as apparent, but it's definitely still there. I want to focus your eyeballs right at the corner of that first S, okay? You can very, very faintly see kind of a light purpley area surrounded by all of that black, or all that dark blue and those black pixels. Does anyone know what that light purpley area is? Or what it's called? I'm looking at my 3D guys. What are we generating here? It's a reflection of? The camera, or the light. Of the light, absolutely. What we're seeing there is a reflection of the directional light source inside of our scene, the spotlight, okay? Now, this is actually nothing more than just a camera trick. With Ray Trace 3Ds, you're creating, an illusion of a light source. Now, we get to control this illusion, and how the specular highlight shows up on our three-dimensional objects is often going to be the first element that's going to define the type of material this object is trying to recreate. If you take a step back and look inside your own kind of experience with looking at things, metallic objects have a much different reaction to light than, let's say, like chalk or concrete or grass or even human skin. The reflection of that light source is going to help define what that material attribute is all about. So that's what we're after. We want to be able to go in and adjust this specular highlight. Now I'm hesitating now because I just had a thought that perhaps the best way to show this is not so much with a blue fill, but with a red fill. And it's going to unfortunately force a render, but that's okay. I just think this is so neat that we can do this in After Effects now. In previous iterations of the 3D elements in After Effects, it was not good, so much to the point that it's like, why bother? Why is this even in here? I'll show you the old school way of like the CS6, or actually it's more like CS 5.5 method of working with text or 3D elements in After Effects. And then I'll show you the future. The future is not what After Effects is doing first party. There we go. Yeah, now you can see that specular highlight a little bit differently. It's showing up as a lighter red next to darker red. I think that'll be good for what we're trying to establish. So let's go into the material options section of our 3D layer. And let's do this. Let's do specular intensity. It's at 50%. Let's drive this up to 100% and see what we can see. It's going to render, 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 render. Now, the specular intensity is going to increase the apparent nature of that specular highlight. So in every sense, it's going to make it brighter, okay? Or it should make it brighter. Let's wait for a render. You're going to hate seeing that yellow render bar. FYI, while we sit here and wait for this to render, next Tuesday, I believe, marks the beginning. Yeah, now check it out. Look, that specular highlight's so much more intense right here. I'm seeing a very noticeable specular highlight. This is good, okay? This is working out very, very well. Let me deselect my stuff here. Yeah. Very cool. Okay. Like I was saying, next week marks the beginning of the National Association of Broadcasters Conference down in Las Vegas. It happens every single year. And the NAB show is definitely, without a doubt, the world's largest media production conference. And this is, like every camera manufacturer, in the world comes to Las Vegas for one gigantic show, and it's a big, big deal for us in the media industry. It really is. It's kind of like our prom. Everyone comes out, they show off the new gadgets in their gear, and it kind of marks the beginning of the next year's technology movement. That happens next week. In addition to like all the camera and the television guys showing off the latest and greatest, usually the production folks, like software makers that are that create applications for production, like After Effects, come out with new versions. So I'll definitely highlight, huh? Yeah, it's CC. It's horrible. It drives me crazy how they're doing CC, because it's not really CC, because there's a version number to everything that they produce now. So let's just stay with version numbers, Let's get rid of all the confusion of saying that it's all Creative Cloud now. No, actually it's not. It's After Effects 14, or I think we're on 14, like 14.1, 14.2, 14.3, Let's just call it that instead of CC. I know, it's just crazy. Anyways. Yeah, It's crazy. It is. It's awful. So next week is a big, big week for us in the media industry. I'm very anxious about it because I'm expecting some things from the Adobe and Apple crowd. Right? Tuesday, Wednesday?
Where?
It's in Las Vegas.
Oh.
Yeah, so you're not going to be able to go, but yeah, sorry. It'll be fun, though. It's a great week to be in the media industry, especially if you're a gadget guy like I am, because they always talk about the latest and greatest coming out of the media world, and I'm expecting some big things. No, we're having class next week, unfortunately. I wish I can go to Las Vegas. That'd be great. All right, anyways, back to our material attributes. We've been increasing the specular highlight of our object here, but that's not the only thing that we can do. If we go back into our shape layer and explore the material options section once again, we can, this specular shininess. So this guy, right now it's at 5%, and the illusion that we're crafting here is something that is kind of something that has a very slow fall off in the lighting world, okay? So an object that has a slow fall off for light is going to absorb the light to a certain degree across the surface of that object, okay? In my mind, the light kind of hangs out on the surface of the object before it's reflected back out into the scene. And what we get in that are very big, very broad, very soft specular highlights, as like what we are seeing here on the curvature of the S's, okay?
Can you produce glare in After Effects?
Can you produce glare, like a lens flare? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's not going to be a true lens flare, but you can fake it. Yeah, there's some really great plugins that will do really accurate, super accurate lens flares. Yeah, one's called Knoll Light Factory. It's awesome. All right. Let's go to the specular shininess. Right now, it's at a default value of 5%. Let's put it up to 50% and see what we get. And we'll render. Yeah.
How many total hours do you think you spent waiting for something to render?
I don't want to know. I really don't want to know. That scares me to think of how many hours I've spent rendering. I don't want to know. It's too many. More hours than I've probably have been alive. Let's put it that way. And I can say that because in most of the jobs, most of the studios that I've worked at, we've had render farms. Aha, look at that. So with a specular shininess of 50, we're getting a much, much different illusion now. If we were to compare and contrast the specular shininess value of 5% to 50%, okay, what type of material are we now creating with a shininess value of 50? Do I need to hit undo so you can go back, which is going to force another render? Yeah. Okay, let me hit undo. It's more metallic, absolutely. It's more metallic because that specular highlight has shrunk significantly, okay? We're creating the illusion of a much quicker fall off where the light ray is just like hitting the surface and reflecting almost immediately. It's not hanging out on the surface like it was before, which a much lower value. Metallic objects, things that are reflective and very hard and dense, have a very quick fall off. They bounce right off. Something like wood is going to have a very slow fall off, because wood is a very porous material. Something like gold is going to have a very quick fall off because it's a very dense, hard material. It's just going to boink and bounce off, and now we're out there. Okay. Well, we get to control all of this. Okay. Specular intensity, specular shininess. Now we have this metal channel here. It's at a value of 100%. Let's just take a look. If we were to remove this and put it back down to 0, okay, here we go. We're going to render now. Oh, render. I need a rendering song. Is anyone a musician in here? Please make me a rendering song.
You can play it every time you get the render.
Exactly. It's like the Jeopardy song. Do 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 do. Does anyone watch Jeopardy anymore? Alex Trebek. I remember there was a couple episodes where they had IBM's Watson machine. Have you guys heard of this? Yeah, he was a contestant on Jeopardy, and I guess he was winning like every single question. Yes, look at that. Now with the metal property dumbed down to 0%, we're getting a much sharper, denser specular highlight, and I think this is reading a whole lot better in my opinion. Okay, so point being is that you're going to want to go in and start messing around with some of these values to get and kind of craft your own recipe for success here. Okay, in the 3D world, this is very, very normal that we start to go in and mess with all these values to create the illusion of different surface attributes. Let's see where I'm splitting the difference. Instead of metal being at 100 or at 0, I'm at 50% now. Let's see the illusion that we get. With a metal percentage of 0, the current frame that's up there, it almost looks kind of plasticky, right? It looks like a really shiny plastic. It doesn't have that metallic quality that we saw a moment ago. It does go good with that font and with the look that we're kind of after, I agree. Yeah, so now with the metal percentage at 50%, that specular highlight's being, it's being blurred again ever so slightly, and we're creating a much different result. All right, let's keep cruising here. All right, so reflection intensity. Right now, we're not crafting any sort of reflections inside of our scene. And are we going to do it? Let's just do it. Let's just do it. This may actually be a render killer. Let's put it up to 100. Yeah. So like I said, the 3D engine in After Effects is a good first kind of stab at it. It's not a great offering, but it's a good offering. It's better than nothing. If you don't have access to any sort of 3D rendering, modeling, or animation package, this is a good option for you guys. It's not the best option, but it certainly is a good option. Okay.
You can't import like Moto stuff, right?
Can't, not with this, not with the default tools. With an extension, with a really excellent plugin that I'm going to show you later, you can. All right, let's see what we get here. Bum, bum, bum. Wah. Boom. Okay, now it makes sense what we have here, right? Why does it make sense that everything's gone black? Everything, and everything in our scene is black, okay? Because the background color of my composition is black. Yeah. Huh? Is yours tweaking out? Uh-oh. Oh, whoa. Whoa, the Matrix is taking over April's machine. It is wigging out right now. So this actually brings up, her screen is like blink, 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 blink. It's not good. This actually brings up a really important point. Huh? I wish she's on a laptop. We're working with some pretty advanced technology, okay? This piece of software is pushing your graphics card to the limit, okay? Which is why it's so slow, and which is why it's probably not working so well on your machine. Your machine might not have a graphics card that's supported by this application, okay? So FYI, that may happen if you're working at home. You may get very poor results or no results. Perfect. All right. Yes. Basically, yeah. Actually, I would say this. You got it. And when it's at 0, I would say that it's really not reflecting anything in the scene except the light source. If you look very, very carefully here at a reflection intensity of 100%, we're starting to reflect like some of the stars in the background. Let's go around to the backside. See what we get here. Yeah, it's kind of, yeah, check it out. On the back of my text, look, it's actually reflecting the lunar landscape photograph that's behind it. So it is calculating true reflections, just at a cost, okay? Now, let's see if we can start to, let's marry the two. Let's put it down to 50% and start blending it. At a value of 100%, we've basically have turned all of our text into chrome, okay? We're working in a black bubble of our composition. Yeah, oh, cool, look at this. That's pretty neat. Now, we're still reflecting a majority of our, there we go, the majority of our environment, which is black at the moment. It's very easy to see that effect on our white text, on our red text over here, a little bit different. And it's thinking, and it's thinking, and it's thinking, and it's thinking. Oh my gosh. Here we go. All right. Better. Now, what we're gaining in all of this, if you look very, very closely, like right in here where the cursor is, yeah, these little moments in there are fantastic because now those are coming from the environment, from that little background that we have in here. Yeah, oh, look at this. Oh my gosh, look at all this. This is fantastic. These little blue streaks. Now we're starting to integrate in the background into our foreground, okay? These little blue streaks here on the E, those are fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I love it, love it, love it. Pretty cool, huh? Okay. Questions so far? Okay. I'm going to do something here. I'm going to put my reflection intensity back down to a value of 0. And then, the reflection sharpness, if you bring this down to 0, you're basically going to blur the reflections. This is an absolute render killer. Let's put this back down to 0, so I don't want to reflect anything. Oh, come on now. There we go. Okay. The last thing that I want to show you guys is transparency. And this is a pretty cool thing. I'm a big fan of transparency. It kind of gives you this very, very cool, high-quality results. In every sense, what we're trying to achieve here is the illusion of glass. So I've increased my transparency percentage from 0 to 50%. And as it renders here, you probably can start to imagine the illusion that we're going to be crafting here momentarily. It is going to make all of our text transparent. Now the transparency, to create the illusion of glass, we really have to start messing around with all 3 of these channels, okay? The transparency is obviously going to make it more or less opaque. The index of refraction, this is an actual value that we can record and calculate in here, out here in the real world, okay? How light refracts through different objects can be measured, okay? This refraction index is something that we're going to need to adjust. I know from my experience that water has a refraction index of 1.33, good starting point. Increasing that refraction index is going to yield you much different results. And there it is. Look at that. Now we're getting more transparent. Let's change the index of refraction to 1.33 just to see what we get. I want to turn off cast shadows. Oh, actually, I'm going to let's keep it on so I don't have to generate another crazy render. See what we get. Is there a cancel render? Just stop rendering. Probably. I'm sure that's in there. Yeah. Yeah, this is an O-case ray trace 3D rendering. It's not a renderer. It's not the best, but it's definitely and certainly not the worst either. Yeah. To be honest with you, it's almost the exact same quality level as the one over in Photoshop. I would argue that it probably is the exact same rendering engine as what they have over in Photoshop. Awesome. Cool. So now a much different illusion. Awesome. Okay, as the light is bending. Let's find out. We're going to rip a hole in the space-time continuum. Render, render, render. Come on, little laptop, you can do it.
Is that your work laptop?
No, this is the laptop the school issued me. I have a Mac Pro at home.
Do you have to use it when you
Huh?
Do you have to use that one?
No. Well, I can't drag around my Mac Pro. They're not going to buy me a Mac Pro, let's put it that way. Yeah. And the only reason I have this laptop, to be entirely honest with you, is I travel to Davis Center quite often. That's the only reason I have a laptop. If I didn't have a laptop, if I didn't travel to the Davis Center, they would issue me a desktop iMac not too dissimilar to what you guys have in front of you. So there it is. There's that with that original space layer. You can see over here that it's competing. We got a little Z-depth competition going on when I turned my original text layer back on. The computer doesn't know how to draw that image because both the original text layer and the 3D extruded text are sharing the exact same spot, which is why we're getting this noise. So let's turn that back off. No render. Looked like it cached it. So there's a lot of really neat things that are available to us when we start messing around with these true three-dimensional layers in After Effects. Ultimately, the path to success is going to require you to monkey around with some of the material options that we've shown you so far, and experiment with different design options. Okay. All right. One other thing. Now there is a way that let's go back into my my extruded object here. Let's turn off transparency because that's killing us. Let's put that back down to a value of 0. And I want to increase my reflection intensity back to a value of 50%. I want to show you guys something that's really honestly quite cool. One of the things that we can do inside of After Effects is create reflection layers. Because what if I don't want to have the background of my scene here generating the reflections on the foreground space text, okay? What if I wanted to, have a different set of rules and a different set of objects reflecting on our text than the prescribed background? And I think this is a really great example. I have a black background in my composition, so increasing the reflectivity of my object is just going to produce blackness, which isn't necessarily what I want. So we're going to do this. We're going to add in another layer here. Now I happen to have a whole bunch of these already saved to my computer. I'm going to show you guys a resource on where you can download these. Here locally in a minute. But I happen to have a whole bunch of reflection maps. And let's do this. Now some of these are free, some of these are ones that I have found. Some of these are some that I've purchased. Definitely don't want that one. Let's choose something that's really big. Now that one doesn't have a blurry one. Let's see. Let's do Mono Valley. Nope, excuse me. I'm just trying to find one here that's not going to kill my performance more than it actually is. That one would work. Let's do some of the reflection toolkit stuff. Let's get something a little bit brighter. That will work. Okay. So what I've imported in here is what we in the traditional 3D world call a reflection map. Okay. It's a spherical image of an environment. And the way this was created is that we took a camera and we basically took a whole series of photographs and then stitched them together. Now this was like, in the late 90s, and we had some pretty primitive technology that yielded us this result. We literally went click, 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 and then we went click, click, click. We had a whole bunch of photos. We physically took a 360-degree spherical panorama of our environment, and then we stitched them together using a program called Stitcher by a company that's no longer in existence, whose name was RealViz. Actually, Autodesk purchased them a number of years ago. And this is what you get. We can do this on our cell phones now, which is kind of awesome to a certain degree. There are really great 360-degree panoramic apps for all of the major cell phones out there, so it's a lot of fun. You can do this. I can do this now with my iPhone with the native toolset, which is awesome. I want to be able to use this layer as the reflection map for my text inside of my composition. I don't want to reflect black background, I want to reflect this, okay? This is actually kind of neat. Let's check this out. It needs to be downstairs inside of our composition to make this work, okay? Let's put it down here, boom. And of course, it's going to require me to render. However, if you go layer, there it is right there, environment layer, okay? So I have my reflection map downstairs already selected. I go to layer, environment layer, and let's see what we create. It's going to think about it for some time. Render, 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 render. I also have all of my environment reflections turned off, so I'm gonna have to unfortunately do another render here momentarily. If you look very carefully at the interface, After Effects is telling us which one of these layers is it's using as the environment reflection with this cool little icon. Okay, there's space. Now we can turn that off and on. It doesn't require a new render. Let's go into my space outlines, my extruded text. Increase the reflection intensity. Let's just put it back. Let's put it to a value of 50% and see what we get. Yes, awesome. Okay, so we're getting there. We're getting a little bit better. Let's go into the actual environment map itself. We do have some options. Let's see, why is it not working the way it needs to be working here? That's because I have it off, excuse me. There we go. Maybe. Yeah, awesome. So it is working. I don't know. It shouldn't be showing up over here in the background, but it is, look, it is reflecting everything now. Let's see, appears in reflection, opacity. If we turn that back down to 0, yep, I had a hunch that's what I was going to do. So what has changed? Something has changed. In previous versions, it didn't used to show up in the background. Let me just see what I can see here. Pretty neat, huh? It's actually showing up. Now, we could always just reposition our camera so that we don't see the background there. That's fine. That may be our solution going forward, but, you know, it's producing a pretty okay result. Albeit a very slow result. Yeah. I had a hunch that's what was going to happen. All right. Let's take a gander. Maybe if I just compose my shot a little bit differently. Yeah, that's much better. Cool. Now that's a pretty interesting dynamic shot, you know. With the tools built into After Effects, we've created something that looks kind of somewhat photorealistic, and I'm very, very pleased about that. Let's see what it looks like as it continues to evaluate its render here. I like that. It's pretty neat. That environment map is basically turning an image, and you can do this with any image. It doesn't have to be one of those spherical reflection maps that I was using. You can turn any image into that environment layer, and it's going to wrap that. Image as if it was like the inside of the beach ball, and our text is just chilling in the center of that object. And oh my gosh, it's taking forever to render. This is just like go grab a cup of coffee, come back, and here we go. Hey, that looks pretty cool. Yeah, not bad. Not bad. I like that. That's pretty rad. That's pretty rad. I'm digging that. Now, there's a couple other things that I would probably look to do to increase the quality of my reflection here, because if you look very, very carefully, it's looking kind of splotchy in certain areas. I like the overall tone that we're getting. We're getting some blues from the sky, some greens from the plants, and the other environmental things in the actual image itself. That's rock and roll. I like that a lot. Let's go into my outlines, and I apologize, I'm tweaking this now. Let's turn my reflection sharpness down some. See if we can blur it out a little bit. Yeah, I think it's going to do that. The other thing that we have to do on our background, see all this mess down here at the bottom? That is one gigantic shadow that's being cast on that lunar landscape image in the background. I need to change that, okay? So after this is done rendering, maybe I'll go through into that layer and deactivate shadows from being cast upon that layer, and we'll get a much, much cooler result. Just simply alone being able to do this in After Effects is kind of groundbreaking. You know, After Effects users have been asking for this feature for many, many moons, so it's cool that we're getting it now. Hey, not bad. Pretty cool. Yeah, high five. Woo! Good job, Pat. Looks pretty great. Good job. All right, anyways. Let me go into my space landscape image here under material options. Let's see, accept shadows. We'll turn that to off. And now that big shadow in the background should go away. It's the nuance of 3D that really makes it pop. It's the nuance of all of these different parameters that really make your objects feel dimensional. Adding reflections, adding shadows, doing small bevels, and messing around with the material options are going to make your images more compelling and produce a much, much, much higher production value. Albeit not perfect, though. I'm looking at the bevels. Look at the E there. I didn't notice that until right now. Look at the E. The computer's messed up on the extrusion. It's either the extrusion or the bevel there, and we're getting a really funky kind of spike underneath the top portion of my E. That thing right there. That is an extrusion error or a bevel error. Heh. I am pleased with that. That makes me very happy. Of course, you're talking to the 3D guys, so this is kind of like my thing. So I get kind of excited when I can make 3D images in just about any application. Space. Questions so far? Everyone good? Everyone understanding the basics of it? All right. Let's kick it up a notch, okay? Because text is one thing, right? Often we want to include 3D elements that aren't exactly text-based. Well, this entire ray traced 3D engine in After Effects uses its extrusion engine on any layer that includes a path. So if you really take this to its full degree, any shape layer, and I mean any shape layer, can be extruded into a three-dimensional shape. Maybe I want a gigantic star behind space. And here's a great suggestion. If this is driving you crazy, turn your renderer back to classic 3D. Okay, you're not going to remove any of those options. Okay, but it will make things go a whole lot faster during the initial flush out of all this. Okay, let's grab polystar here. I want to transform it along the z-axis. Oops, excuse me. A little too far. Let's turn off my environment layer. Yes, that is going to work, I think. Yep, cool. And material options, let's turn cast shadows or accept shadows to off. Wonderful. And now we can turn our Ray Trace 3D engine back on. All of those parameters should be preserved, and I'm going to say should be preserved, and make no guarantees here. But any path-based item inside of After Effects can be extruded into a three-dimensional shape. So that means you can have, three-dimensional stars and circles and rectangles. Shoot, even if you do, you can make compound paths using those merge options that we've been working with earlier. You can create some really compelling shapes quickly. Well, maybe not quickly, quicker than the way you used to be able to do this. There it is. Wonderful. Let's extrude this out now. And let's transform it. Let's rotate it. There we go. Let's see what we get here. Do. Okay, this is a mistake because it's obviously killing my render. Ah. Yeah, there is an extrusion on there, but it's entirely in shadow right now, so we're not seeing it the way we should be seeing it. But it is extruded. There's depth there, and the reason I know that there's depth is that it's blotting out the stars. I think you get the idea, though. I won't subject you guys to another painful render as I monkey around with the settings to yield a more visually stimulating result, unless you would like me to do that. No, yeah, I didn't think so. Yeah, pretty neat. I'm pleased with it. I'm pleased with it. You can tweak things. Yeah, absolutely. I think you flip it over to Ray Traced when you're ready to do that final render, or to do what the layout is. To get the extrusions, to get the spacing between all your elements. And then while you're animating, clearly you don't want to have this thing on, right? You want to go back to the classic 3D engine, animate in a little bit more of a real-time fashion, and then when you're ready to go, then you pop it back into Ray Trace, do all your final tweaks, render it out. Then if you're charging a lot of money, I say do whatever makes you a ton of money. If you're paid hourly, yeah. If you're working on a per project basis, then you definitely turn this off until the very end, because this is going to kill your iterations. Okay, questions. Questions on what we've explored so far. Yeah. It is. And in this version of the engine, this is the only thing that you can do. Yeah, you can't deform it. You can't do any sort of sweeping or arrays or anything like that. It just kind of is what it is. So. Like I said, good first step. Not a great first step, but a good one. A good one. Especially if you compare it to 5. Oh my gosh. The 3D engine in 5 was... Say again?
So technically it's like a good second step.
Yeah, this is like, actually to be honest with you, this is a good third step, because in 5 they introduced this whole idea. 6 they built upon this extrusion idea. And then in CC, they added in all this reflection and refraction stuff in there to give you a much more high quality result. It's pretty great. Oh man, it was the early days in 5. It was horrible. Now, I mean, this is usable, okay? Let me show you what it used to be like. No, I won't show you what it used to be like, because it's just going to make you guys go crazy, okay? It was just horrible. It was absolutely, yeah. If I wanted to get like 3D text into After Effects, you'd have to create it in a true 3D modeling application or in Photoshop, right? Either way, it would end up in Photoshop because Photoshop now does 3D for whatever reason, okay? And you had to embed a 3D layer in your Photoshop document, and then you took that Photoshop document, imported it into After Effects, and enable Live 3D, okay? And the whole idea was that you'd be able to manipulate your three-dimensional object inside of Photoshop, and then those changes would kind of ripple update into After Effects, and it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. It was just a disaster, and it's one of those things where I would have rather them not included that than to give us something that was broken. It drove me absolutely crazy, and so I used it once, and I said, this is stupid. I couldn't even rotate it around in After Effects. It turned it into a two-dimensional layer in After Effects, and that's useless to me. Okay, anyways, I mentioned at the beginning of class today that this is a good first step. It's not the best option available to us. Let me show you probably the best option. And I don't promote too many plugins, but this one's worth promoting. The guys down at Video Copilot have come up with some technology that's really, really neat. Copilot. I think is it .com? .net. There we go. Videocopilot.net. This is a great learning resource for how to do visual effects inside of After Effects. They have a very active blog and a very active tutorial section that really focus on the visual effects side of working in motion graphics. So if you're looking to do like background placement, wire removal, particle effects, gunshots, explosions, things like that with the tools in After Effects, this is the place to go. They have some really phenomenal learning resources that you guys can take advantage of. They're big 3D nerds like I am, and they've created a plugin for After Effects called Element, and it's great. It's really, really, really neat. It's Element 3D. Here it is. Ta-da! Element 3D does exactly what I want to do in After Effects, and I'm really honestly expecting them to make an Element 3D version 2.0 next week at NAB. That's my suggestion. So don't buy this plugin today. Wait until next week, because there's like an imminent release. I'm confident. Let's see, product tour. I won't go through the entire video because it's very long, and I know you guys don't want to look at it.
Hey, what's up? Andrew Kramer here for
plug in the sound.
VideoCopilot.net, and today we're going to take a look at the Element 3D plugin. What Element is a particle-based plugin.
Okay, I tell you what, let's take a break. I gotta fish out the headphone jack that just fell down into this empty chasm of the desk.
Move the camera around interactively.
So let's take a break while I fish out the headphone jack. couple things. I forgot to mention something earlier before that I wanted to show you guys. I know, I'm sure some of you guys probably saw me poking around with this during the break, but just as kind of a small, subtle little reminder, since we're working in an environment that's entirely path-driven, we can start to incorporate Illustrator files into the mix. I think I showed this a couple weeks ago, but I want to kind of piggyback on this Illustrator pipeline a little bit because we want to be able to work with Illustrator files as much as we can. So I've just brought in the Illustrator file of our new SCC logo. Here it is. And if I drag it down into my comp, well, I've already done that. There it is. There it is in my comp. I turn it on. Everything's black at the moment. I want to be able to go in and edit all of my paths, right? I mean, it is a layer. It's an Illustrator layer, but it's not converted into a whole series of paths. And this is something that's new in CC, where we can take an Illustrator file, convert it into a shape layer, and preserve 100% of all of the paths that were used to generate that Illustrator file. Awesome. And we can edit those paths. Even better. Yes, this is exactly what I'm after. It's pretty great. However, we got to convert it into a shape layer first. So here's my layer. Select it, go layer, convert shapes from vector. So this is new. Okay, boom, and what we get right above it is a new shape layer. We can delete the original now. There it is. Huzzah. Awesome. Okay. Very cool. Very cool. And if we expand its content section, you can see a whole series of groups. Now, I didn't make these groups. These are the exact same path groups that were created over in Illustrator. So we really are extracting all of the shape information, or excuse me, all of the path information that you created over in Illustrator here in After Effects. And if I expand group number 1, you can see that there are a lot of paths used to create group number 1, and specifically where we're working with down here are all these individual layers. And I just love this. I can even go in and grab them. I'm sorry, say again? Yeah. We did that at the very beginning. That's the first thing we did today. Yeah, it's under that layer menu. Convert shapes from text right there. Yeah. So we're getting all the color, or all the path information. I want to change the color to white on each one of these groups real fast. Each one comes with a fill. Now that fill option came directly from the fill command inside of Illustrator. If we did any sort of stroke effects, some of those stroke effects are going to come through, as the stroke engine in Illustrator is far more robust than what we have here. But at the very least, it will work. You may not get a lot of the gradients and what have you that you're used to working with over in Illustrator, but it's still apt. All right, here we go. Group 7, fill 7. Whoa, almost done. Let's take a step back here. Boom, boom. There's our new SCC logo in all its glory. Awesome. Let's transform it into a 3D layer. And now, let's also make it a little bit bigger. Okay. Yeah, SCC in space. And now, let's change my rendering engine from Classic 3D to Ray Trace 3D. That way, I can start doing my extrusions on this illustration. Now, I've also turned my quality down to quarter, so I get a little bit more faster performance here. So it looks pretty wonky. But check it out. I can just increase my extrusion depth some. And now, dun, da, 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 there it is. Lovely 3D extrusions right here in After Effects, based off of artwork that was originally created by our one and only Don Button, the graphic designer that did all the work from the new website and the new logo. This is his project file in every sense. This is the master Illustrator file that he used for our new website. FYI, have you guys checked out the new website? Pretty great, huh? Logarithmically, exponentially better from where we came from, right? I love it. It's a work of art. It really is. Fantastic. And if we were, let's do this. Let's get crazy a little bit here. Let's turn on our environmental map, our environment layer, see what we get. You can already start to see some of those reflections pop in. Let's make the reflection intensity at 50%. Come on. 50%. Let's see what we get. Yeah, pretty cool. So, working with Illustrator files, we can do it again. Or we can finally do it here in After Effects. And really get what we're after. Okay, this is looking great. Okay, before we went on a break, I mentioned that there are options out there that do 3D in After Effects much better than the first-party options. Element 3D is the plugin to get if you're looking to do 3D in After Effects. This is done entirely in application. So with this plugin, you're able to import a whole series of 3D models into After Effects. So if you're a Moto guy like I am or a Cinema 4D user, you can just export the project file. Well, export the model with all of its textures and material attributes established. Element 3D will grab onto all of those and work with it inside the After Effects rendering engine. It's very, very cool. Here's a small brief overview. I won't play it all, but it's definitely very cool.
The After Effects lighting and completely change the look of my scene. Now, remember, this is a particle-based system. So what you can do is create some really interesting animations with just a single object. But you can also do a lot more than just that. So today, I'm going to show you some of the different ideas of what this plugin is capable of doing. What makes this plugin so powerful is our custom-built OpenGL rendering. And you can see we have some amazing speed right inside of our comp. Let's take a look.
A little bit different than what we're doing.
So we can turn on things like depth of field. And
Bam.
Slow things down a little bit, but you still get some pretty nice responses.
Isn't that crazy?
So let's take a look at the array option. So I'll just shut the depth of field.
Okay, we're going to fast forward a little bit because he talks about like all the parameters. Here we go.
A couple of keyframes. Now, in this example, we can see that element is not just for motion graphics, but you can do some really impressive visual effects as well. So here we have this Black Hawk helicopter, and we can actually move around the lighting in our scene to try to match our background plate. Now, we can go inside the element scene setup to see how this all works. So basically, I've got this model imported of this Black Hawk. You can see we've got some nice reflection mapping. Now, it's not true ray tracing, but it does look really, really good. And this is a 100,000 polygon model that's rendering extremely fast. And it's got some really nice high-quality textures. These are some 4K maps with specular and normal bump. So really cool capabilities, and you can import them as OBJ or Cinema 4D files. In this example, we can take a look at the particle animation engine. What it does is allows you to
Isn't that crazy? All in After Effects.
in really intelligent ways. So the cool thing is it's fully dynamic. So check this out. I can change the direction of this effect.
Is this
and
plugin
pretty
free?
much
No, it's 150 bucks,
Oh,
right after I make the change.
but it's worth its weight in gold if you do a lot of this stuff, or if you want to do all of this stuff in After Effects.
Make a few changes, and there's also tons of great options for
I don't know. I would hope so.
the randomness, which kind of makes the
Shoot, they should give me a free copy because I think I've sold more copies of Element 3D than a lot of other people.
this up and make the animation a little softer during the cascade.
It's awesome.
So there's really some amazing capabilities, and I'm just beginning to scratch the surface. So let's take a look at a couple of other examples here. So here we have a pre-fractured piece of geometry that can be animated as well. So it doesn't actually animate with physics and gravity, but it has a really intelligent animation system that interpolates the position of particles. So you can sort of create some pseudo-destruction. Again, in this example, we have some pre-fractured geometry that's breaking up into pieces as it falls away. So really, really cool. And again, the speed is pretty decent. So we have this complex simulation, and I'm able to actually drag around in the scene. I can reanimate, do some really great things. Another impressive feature is the multi-pass options. So here we have this missile, and I can go and solo this so we can see what it looks like. And let's say I want to isolate the illumination so that I can create this nice looking glow. Well, what you can do is go into the output and change the output mode to any one of these different options. So in this case, we can set it to illumination and create a pass that allows us to add a specific glow. We also have a built-in mixer. So The mixer allows you to dynamically composite those different passes, such as specularity. So let me just punch up the specular, or let me bring the reflectivity down a little bit. You can even turn the illumination down right from the multi-pass mixer. So this is a great way to animate the different properties without having to worry about a bunch of different layers together. It's all right here, ready to be edited. And if all that wasn't enough, you can also create some impressive
Here we go.
3D text. So we can take a look at some of the options here. We can fly around this. It looks really cool. And again, we have some impressive control over how these pieces animate. So we can control the random rotation. We can do a random size. We can do all sorts of different things, just like with the other examples. Except in this case, we can just make some great looking titles. What makes all of this possible is our custom user interface. So if we open that up, we can take a look at how this works. So here we have our object. Now we can select our object. We can select our material and make edits to the material. We can also come over to the presets and apply some basic shaders. We also have a separate product called the Pro Shaders. And the Pro Shaders is a collection of 200 different materials. So I can come inside here and we just see a ton of different materials that you can drop right onto your various objects. And they look
Pretty neat, huh?
And they all look really impressive. They have bump maps, spec maps, color maps, and they tile perfectly. So you can use them on logos and text. So if you're doing a lot of titles or things like that, it's a great way to get started right away. There's some translucent types of materials that are really interesting. So if we turn on, our environment, you can kind of see what that looks like. There's ice and some other, interesting looking materials that are just fun to play with. Now, the last thing we'll talk about are the Video Copilot model packs. So if you're looking to get started right away with a bunch of great models that are already set up to use inside of the plugin, check out the different packs. The Projectile Weapons pack has some really cool stuff in there that you can use right away. You've got some shell casing, guns, missiles, axe. We'll have a whole list on the website. But all of these models are ready to go. And there's also the sound and music collection. And this contains some really impressive objects that are ready to go. We've got the headphones inside of that collection here. We've got the sports section, which, if you look at some of the quality on these models, it's amazing. And they're fully customizable. So, for example, if this looks too shiny, you can go into the specular, bring that down, and there you go. There's a lot of capability there, and they're not just single small objects. We've got things like a baseball stadium that's really cool looking. There's other objects like this boxing ring that just has some great detail. Now, if you're into motion design, we have a really cool collection for that contains a bunch of abstract elements that you can use with the plugin. So there's things like liquid meshes. So these are really impressive. Let me kind of shut this off here. And all of these objects can be animated inside of After Effects. So we can do things like go into the Pro Shaders and create some really interesting looking surfaces, and you can combine them with with other objects as well. So it's not just one thing. You can combine multiple liquid meshes together as well as animate them. So we've got some orange soda here, and there's tons of different variations that you can use for your motion design work.
It's pretty great. Anyways, I'm not going to force you guys to watch all of this, but it's one of the few plugins that I suggest people take a look at, especially if they're starting to extend their tool set to include 3D motion graphics in what you're doing out there. It's best in class. It really is. It's quite great. I've had an opportunity to mess around with it for a couple jobs, and it's great. It really is game-changing. Being able to do everything in After Effects for the motion graphics crowd is really, really, really important. Because the moment they have to start going back into a 3D app like Cinema 4D or Modo and remodel things, rematerialize, and re-render, that's a system that's very much in the way. being able to do it all in one app allows you to go through your design iterations much, much faster than the alternative. So it's good stuff. Element 3D from the Video Copilot guys. Can't recommend it enough. It is quite good. I love it a lot. All right. So any questions so far? All right. So this week's homework and lab is going to focus entirely on building 3D elements inside of After Effects. Your homework comes from Chapter 11 in your book, and as a reminder, Chapter 11 is going to really direct and steer you to using the Cinema 4D Lite plugin. We're not going to go into that today because I think I've given you guys enough to to chew on for the week. There are instructions in the extra credits section of Chapter 11 that kind of walks in line with what we've described and covered today. Okay, so the creation of 2D text elements, the extrusion of those 2D text elements using the ray trace 3D elements, and the application of materials to get the final result. So your mission is to complete Chapter 11 for this week. There's the 3D text Dropbox on D2L that you should place all your assets when you're finished. And as always, I just need your After Effects project file and the rendered QuickTime movie to successfully complete this project. One thing to note, we're going to be increasing the files or the frame size. Last week, a number of you guys started to pick up on the fact that it's 960 by 540. We're now entering into the world of HD. Gone are the days where everything is standard definition. Now we're working with HD files, so our frame size is getting a little bit bigger. Also, please note that the frames per second has also changed. We're not working at 2997 for our homework. We're rocking 24. So please make sure you leverage all of these settings before you really embark on your homework. Okay? So that's our homework. Our lab assignment is going to be a fun one. You're going to be making a three-dimensional room using nothing but two-dimensional shape layers, or two-dimensional layers, excuse me. So this is what we're after. If you look at the example of what we're trying to craft here, all of these things are two-dimensional elements that were transformed into 3D layers and then positioned and rotated. You're going to rotate and position all of these things to make kind of like a little mini museum of the projects that you've created thus far in this class. Okay. Ideally, what we should be doing here is just kind of leveraging our experience and our understanding of these three-dimensional layers in After Effects to achieve a more compelling result. One of the things that I'm looking for you guys to include in this animation is that 3D camera. And the example that I provided you is very, very basic. From this opening shot, you can see that I've created a basic room using nothing more than 6 separate two-dimensional layers. These can be anything. I use some concrete images to establish the wall. I think I have like a groovy wood parquet pattern for the floor, and then I forgot what the ceiling is. Okay, you're going to have to place a whole bunch of lights on each one of the walls to get the illumination that you're after. If you don't, it's going to be very, very dark on the inside of this room. So you are kind of, in essence, building a little three-dimensional room out of two-dimensional elements. Okay, make sense? Okay, that's the overall specification that I'm looking for on this assignment. I'm giving you guys a lot of creative freedom to make whatever type of 3D room / museum that you want. Do whatever you'd like. However, there are some particulars that I'm looking for. And if you go up to the required elements, I outline those for you guys. Okay, 3 video layers of your choosing. So please have 3 pieces of artwork, if you will, hanging on your walls, and they must be videos. Okay. Your 3D room must have at least 6 sides, preferably all 4 walls and then a floor and a ceiling. Okay, those at the very least, that's what I would suggest. If you don't necessarily have to make a box. People in the past have made kind of a little maze. That's fine too. I'll leave it up to your creativity to define what the end result looks like. It's up to you. So spot and area lights for illumination. Those are just spotlights. Don't worry about the area lights. You can use area lights. I think we talked about the different light types earlier. Spot and area lights are going to give you the best results, in my opinion. Create 3 camera movements that focus on the video layers. And you can see from my very basic illustration what those 3 camera movements could look like. They could just be a simple pan, but make them dynamic. If you look at the ones that I've created, this is something that I do all the time. Okay, so we do the initial push in, boom. Then we flip around, boom, there's that wall. But look at the next camera movement. I don't go to the next 90-degree wall, right? I push in, then I do 1 camera movement, then the next camera movement isn't just a return of the previous one where I go whoop once again. I kind of miss a wall and I spin around again. Gives us a little bit more energy, a little bit more dynamicism. In the motion world,
4 video files, not 3.
at least 3 video files. At least 3. You're probably going to need some more to flush it out, but at least 3. In the motion world, you never really want to repeat your animations over and over and over again. Okay? The moment you start repeating yourself is the moment our audience kind of unplugs and stops paying attention. So you got to change it up. You can't do the exact same movement over and over and over again. You can push in. That's one movement. This is that second movement. If I was to do another 90-degree turn, my audience is going to get bored. They're going to be uninterested, and I can almost guarantee that they're going to stop watching my video if I start repeating things. So change it up. Add a little bit more. Add a little bit of creativity in what you're doing to create a series of motions that are interesting. And then I think I have one epic one where I spin around a couple times before I land on that final frame. Questions? Everyone good? The frame size for this animation is 720 by 480. 720 by 480, excuse me. It's also going to be a 10-second long animation, so it is going to be something a little bit long.
Can the video be placed anywhere?
Anywhere. Anywhere. I'm going to leave it up to you. I'm going to leave it up to you. Questions on what our lab work is going to be for this week? You can probably bang this out in the next hour. It really is not an impossible one to do. Questions? All right, let's get to work.